When the glory comes, it will be ours. It will be ours. Oh, one day when the war is won.
The civil rights movement in the United States has a long history. In 1865, slavery is officially abolished.
In 1866, the Civil Rights Act outlawed black codes.
In 1868, the 14th Amendment grants African Americans full citizenship rights.
In 1870, the 15th Amendment gives blacks full suffrage.
But in 1876, Jim Crow laws began to deny rights to Southern blacks.
And in 1896, Plessy v. Ferguson declares segregation legal.
From 1941 to 1945, African Americans served bravely in World War II, both home and abroad.
And in 1948, Truman fully integrated the military.
The stage is set to challenge the legality of the clause of separate but equal in America.
You can never whip these birds if you don't keep you and them separate. I found that out in Birmingham. You've got to keep the white and the black separate.
Ever since Plessy v. Ferguson, Southern states fiercely enforced segregation. Jim Crow laws forbade interracial marriages and outlawed informal contact between the races. There were separate schools, bus seats, water fountains, and restrooms. Black facilities were always inferior to white facilities, and they were labeled with humiliating signs. Some forms of informal segregation existed in northern cities as well. Blacks could find housing in all-black neighborhoods only and faced hatred on the job front. Even pro sports were segregated until 1948 when Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier with the Brooklyn Dodgers.
Aggressive direct action was needed to wipe away segregation forever. The NAACP had fought against segregation since 1909, but now they looked to take legal action against the Jim Crow South. Their legal strategy was to sue over the inequality in the educational system, which leads to the court case Brown versus Board of Education in 1954. In 1951, 8-year-old Linda Brown is denied admission to her local school. The all-white school that she wanted to attend was only 4 blocks away from her home, but she is forced to walk 20 blocks a day to go to her black school. Led by attorney Thurgood Marshall, the NAACP sues the school board. They claim that Brown's citizenship rights, given to her by the 14th Amendment, were violated by denying her equal access to education simply because she was African American. The Supreme Court decides, unanimously, that segregation is unconstitutional. They ruled that the separate but equal clause established in Plessy v. Ferguson is illegal and violates the 14th Amendment rights of citizens.
The Brown case forces schools everywhere to desegregate by law, but the ruling doesn't lead to immediate integration in the South. Southern states resist the new law and keep the races separate. As white Southerners fight the ruling, the stage is set for conflict, and this leads to the crisis in Little Rock. In 1957, Arkansas Governor Orville Faubus turns 9 black students away from Central High School. The Little Rock 9 were students that were admitted to the integrated Central High. 8 of the 9 students were escorted by the NAACP into the school. The 9th, Elizabeth Eckford, walked alone, surrounded by an angry mob that harassed her. President Eisenhower set in federal troops to guard the students daily. The troops would ensure that students could enter the school without being attacked. By the end of the year, Governor Faubus closed the school down to prevent further integration. Because of the crisis surrounded by the integration of Central High School in Little Rock, the Civil Rights Act of 1957 was passed. This gave the Attorney General more power to enforce school desegregation.
Segregation is also challenged in public transportation throughout the South. This leads to the Montgomery bus boycott. In 1955, Rosa Parks, a seamstress and NAACP member, is arrested in Montgomery, Alabama. When asked, she refused to give up her seat to a white man and moved to the rear of the bus, where the rest of the African Americans were forced to sit. To protest segregation laws for buses, African Americans staged a bus boycott in the city of Montgomery. African Americans in the city stayed off buses and walked miles to work every day. The bus system ran empty, and fees weren't collected, and white businesses were hurt throughout the city. The mayor of Montgomery refused to back down, and in protest, ran empty buses for nearly a year. After harassment, threats, and arrests, the Montgomery bus boycott worked. The buses were desegregated in the town of Montgomery, and the Supreme Court outlawed segregation on buses officially in 1956. In addition to leading to the integration of buses everywhere across the country, the Montgomery bus boycott also led to a new leader in the civil rights movement, Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a third-generation Baptist minister with degrees in sociology and philosophy. King had preached during the boycott and led the community in its struggle. His leadership inspired the boycott to succeed, but he reluctantly accepted the leadership role of the civil rights movement. King advocated a non-violent approach to civil rights, known as soul force. Martin Luther King Jr. modeled the approach after Mahatma Gandhi in India, who had peacefully protested British rule. King believed that African Americans shouldn't give in and hate whites, and shouldn't retaliate with physical force. Instead, they should overcome it and love whites, living alongside them, using soul force.
The success in Montgomery and Little Rock led to the spread of the movement. Advocates of civil rights saw hope that things could actually change. Young people and white Americans joined the movement. New groups formed and used King's soul force strategy to protest. So let's take a look at these new groups that formed during the civil rights movement. The first group is the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, also known as the SCLC. It was formed in 1957. It was made up of African American ministers and aimed to use churches as bases to organize protests. Another group was the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, also known as SNCC, and it was formed in 1960. It was made up of college students, both black and white, who pledged peaceful protest. SNCC famously staged sit-ins at segregated lunch counters and were willing to be arrested in order to get their point across.
Now the time has come for this nation to fulfill its promise. The events in Birmingham and elsewhere have so increased the cries for equality that no city or state or legislative body can prudently choose to ignore them. The fires of frustration and discord are burning in every city, north and south, where legal remedies are not at hand. Next week, I shall ask the Congress of the United States to act, to make a commitment it has not fully made in this century to the proposition that race has no place in American life or law.